The morning began like any other. Sarah Miller stood at the front of her classroom, chalk dust coating her worn cardigan, watching 23 pairs of eyes look up at her with varying degrees of attention. Some were eager, some distracted, some fighting to stay awake after going to bed hungry the night before. She knew that look well. She had worn it herself as a child. The radiator clanked and hissed in the corner, barely keeping the November cold at bay. The windows rattled when trucks passed on the street outside. The textbooks on the shelves were outdated, their spines cracked and pages yellowed with age. Some had been in use for over 15 years. But Sarah didn't see any of that. She saw possibility. She saw futures waiting to be shaped. She saw young minds ready to learn if only someone would take the time to reach them. Mathematics is not just about numbers, she told her students that morning, her voice carrying across the small classroom with practiced clarity. It is about solving problems. It is about looking at something difficult and finding a way through. That skill will help you with more than homework. It will help you with life. When you face challenges, when things seem impossible, you will know how to break them down into smaller pieces and solve them one step at a time. A girl in the third row raised her hand tentatively. Her name was Maria, a shy 11-year-old with dark eyes that held too much worry for someone so young. "Miss Miller, my mom says we are learning stuff we will never use. She says poor kids like us do not need algebra. She says we should focus on getting jobs after high school, not wasting time on things that do not matter." Sarah paused, setting down her chalk carefully. She walked slowly between the desks, her shoes clicking softly on the worn linoleum floor. She stopped beside Maria's desk and spoke gently but firmly, making sure every student in the room could hear. "Your mother loves you and wants to protect you. She wants to make sure you can take care of yourself. But I need you to hear this, and I need all of you to hear this. You are not defined by where you come from or how much money your family has. You are not defined by what neighborhood you live in or what jobs your parents work. You are defined by what you choose to do with the opportunities in front of you. And I am here to make sure you have those opportunities. I am here to make sure that when doors open for you, you are ready to walk through them. Hope, maybe, or determination." Sarah squeezed her shoulder gently before returning to the front of the classroom. The bell rang for lunch. The children scattered, their voices echoing down the hallway in a chaotic symphony of youth and energy. Sarah gathered her things slowly, her shoulders heavy with the fatigue that had become her constant companion. She had been awake until 2 in the morning grading papers by lamplight because her electricity had been shut off temporarily. She had paid the bill that morning, standing in line at the utility company for 40 minutes, choosing between that expense and buying groceries for the week. The electricity won. She could make do with peanut butter sandwiches for a few more days. She had done it before. She left the building through the side door, avoiding the teacher's lounge where her colleagues gathered to eat and complain about pay and benefits and the administration. She agreed with their complaints, understood their frustration, but complaining took energy she did not have to spare. She needed this lunch break to recharge, to find some small moment of peace in the chaos of her days. She walked across the street to the small park that sat adjacent to the school. It was not much of a park, really, just a patch of grass with a few trees, some benches, and a small playground that had seen better days. But it was quiet, and it was hers for 30 minutes each day. The park was nearly empty. A woman pushed a stroller along the path, cooing softly to her baby. An older man walked a small terrier in the distance, moving slowly with careful steps. Sarah made her way to her usual bench beneath an old oak tree that still held a few stubborn leaves despite the late autumn chill. She unwrapped her sandwich,
the same peanut butter on wheat bread she had been eating for a week, and opened the paperback novel she had borrowed from the library. It was a mystery, nothing too demanding, just enough to transport her somewhere else for a little while. She allowed herself this one luxury, these 30 minutes of escape into another world where problems were solved by the final chapter, and justice always prevailed. She was 3 pages in when she heard the sound. It was faint at first, like an engine revving somewhere in the distance, but growing louder with each second.
She looked up instinctively to see a black SUV speeding down the street adjacent to the park, far too fast for a residential area. The vehicle was weaving slightly, the driver clearly distracted or reckless. At the same moment, she saw him. A small boy, no more than 7 years old, running into the street with the single-minded focus children have when chasing something they want. A red ball bounced ahead of him, bright against the gray pavement. He did not look, did not check for cars, just ran with complete trust that the world would be safe. Everything slowed down. Sarah's brain calculated trajectories with the precision of the mathematics she taught. She saw where the SUV would be in 3 seconds, 4 seconds, 5. She saw where the boy would be. She saw the intersection of those 2 paths, saw the inevitable collision that would end a young life in an instant. She did not think. Her body moved before her mind could catalog all the reasons why this was dangerous, why she might get hurt, why someone else might act. She dropped her book and her sandwich and ran. Her legs pumped hard, her breath burning in her chest, her worn shoes slapping against the pavement. The SUV was 20 feet away, 15, 10. She could hear the roar of the engine now, could see the driver looking down at something in his lap, completely oblivious. She reached the boy and grabbed him with both arms, wrapping herself around his small body. She threw herself forward with all her strength, using her momentum to carry them both toward the far sidewalk. They tumbled together, her body instinctively positioning itself to take the impact, to shield him from the concrete. They hit the sidewalk hard just as the SUV roared past, so close that the wind of its passage whipped her hair across her face and tore at her clothes. She felt the heat of the engine, smelled burning rubber. Another half second, and they both would have been dead. For a moment, there was only the sound of her ragged breathing and the pounding of her heart. Her elbow screamed with pain. Her hip throbbed. But she was alive. The boy was alive. That was all that mattered. Then the boy started to cry, deep, shuddering sobs born of shock and fear. She pulled him close, running her hands over his arms and legs, checking for injuries with the practiced efficiency of someone who had supervised hundreds of children over the years. "Are you hurt? Can you tell me your name? Does anything feel broken?" The boy sobbed against her shoulder, his small hands clutching at her blouse. His clothes were expensive, she noticed, even in her shaken state. Designer labels on his jacket. His shoes were pristine white sneakers that probably cost more than her monthly rent. A smartwatch on his wrist that looked like something from a science fiction movie. "Thomas," he managed to gasp between sobs. "My name is Thomas." "Okay, Thomas. You are safe now. Everything is going to be okay." A woman came running from the park, screaming his name. Oh my God, Thomas!" The woman reached them and fell to her knees, pulling the boy from Sarah's arms with desperate hands. She was young, maybe 25, wearing a crisp uniform that marked her as a nanny or professional caregiver. Her face was pale with terror, her hands shaking violently. "I only looked away for a second. He was right there next to me on the bench, and then the ball rolled, and he just ran. I tried to catch him, but he was so fast, and then you, and that car, and oh my God, oh my God!"
The woman was hyperventilating. Sarah put a hand on her arm, trying to ground her. "It is okay. Take a deep breath. He is safe now. Look at him. He is fine." "But if you had not been there, if you had not moved so fast—" The woman could not finish the sentence. Her whole body was trembling. Sarah stood up slowly, testing her legs. Her hands were shaking now that the adrenaline was beginning to fade, leaving behind the cold wash of realization about what had almost happened. She noticed a scrape on her elbow where she had hit the pavement, blood seeping through the torn fabric of her cardigan. Her hip was going to bruise badly. But she was okay. They were all okay. "Any decent person would have done the same," Sarah said quietly. The SUV had stopped down the street, pulled haphazardly to the curb. The driver got out, an older man in his 60s, looking confused and shaken. He walked toward them slowly, his face gray with shock. "I did not see him. I swear I did not see him. I was just checking my phone for 1 second and—" Sarah waved him away, unable to deal with his guilt on top of everything else. "Just go. Be more careful. Pay attention to the road."
"Lives depend on it," the man nodded, looking like he might cry, and drove off slowly, carefully, his lesson learned in the worst possible way. The nanny pulled out her phone with trembling fingers, nearly dropping it twice before managing to unlock it. "I need to call his father. He needs to know what happened. He needs to know his son is safe." She dialed with shaking hands and spoke rapidly when someone answered. "Mr. Ashford, there has been an incident. Thomas is safe, but there was a car, and a woman saved him, and we are at the park near Riverside Elementary. Yes, we are fine, but please hurry. Please come right away." Sarah touched the woman's shoulder gently. "I should go. I have a class in 20 minutes. My students will be coming back from lunch." "No, please," the nanny said urgently. "His father will want to thank you. He will want to meet you. Please, just wait a few minutes. Please." Sarah hesitated. She did not want thanks. She did not want attention or recognition. She had done what anyone should do, what any teacher would do for any child. But the nanny looked so desperate, her eyes pleading, and Thomas was still crying softly, clinging to her with small fingers knotted in her uniform. So Sarah waited. The few minutes turned into 10. Sarah stood awkwardly, aware of her torn and dirty clothes, of the blood on her elbow, of the way other people in the park were starting to stare and whisper. She was about to insist on leaving when a car pulled up to the curb. Not the SUV, but a sleek silver sedan that looked like it belonged in a magazine spread about luxury vehicles. The kind of car Sarah had only ever seen in passing, driven by people who lived in a different world. A man stepped out, tall and broad-shouldered, moving with the confidence of someone used to being in command. He wore a suit that probably cost more than Sarah earned in 6 months, perfectly tailored to his athletic frame. His face was sharp, handsome in a severe way, with strong features and intense dark eyes. But in those eyes, Sarah saw raw fear as he ran toward them, his usual composure completely shattered. "Thomas!" He scooped the boy into his arms, holding him tight against his chest, one large hand cradling the back of his son's head. "Are you hurt? Tell me where it hurts. Did the car hit you? Should we go to the hospital?" "I am okay, Daddy," Thomas said, his voice muffled against his father's shoulder. "The lady saved me." "The ball went in the street, and I ran after it, and the car was coming really fast, and she grabbed me, and we fell down together, and the car went whoosh right past us, so close I could feel the wind." The man closed his eyes for a long moment, and Sarah saw his jaw clench with barely contained emotion. His arms tightened around his son, and she realized he was fighting not to break down completely. When he opened his eyes again, he looked at her for the first time, his gaze intense and searching, as if trying to understand who she was and why she had done what she did. "You saved my son." It was not a question. It was a statement of fact, delivered in a voice rough with emotion. Sarah shrugged, uncomfortable with the weight of his stare and the intensity of the moment. "It happened very fast. I just reacted. I did not really think about it." He set Thomas down gently, making sure the boy was steady on his feet, then walked over to her. Up close, he was even more imposing, tall enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. But there was no arrogance in his bearing, no sense of superiority, just profound gratitude and something else she could not quite name. "I am Jonathan Ashford. This is my son, Thomas. He paused, and she saw him struggling for words. A man who was clearly used to being in control, used to having answers for everything, suddenly at a loss. "I do not know how to thank you. You risked your life for a child you do not even know. You could have been killed." "I am a teacher," Sarah said simply. "Every child matters to me. It does not matter whether I know them or not." She glanced at her watch and felt a spike of anxiety. "I really do need to get back to school. My students will be returning to class in a few minutes." "Wait, at least let me get your name, your information. I want to do something for you. A reward or compensation for your injuries or—" "Please, no." Sarah held up her hand to stop him. "I do not want anything. I am glad your son is safe. That is enough." She started to walk away, but he followed, his long strides easily keeping pace with her. "You are bleeding. You are hurt. Let me at least take you to a doctor. Get that looked at properly. It is the least I can do. I have a first aid kit at school. I will clean it up there. I will be fine." She turned to face him, meeting his eyes directly. "Mr. Ashford, your son is safe. That is all the reward I need. Spend your time with him. Hold him close. Tell him you love him. That is what matters. Not rewarding me for doing what any decent person should do." She walked away before he could protest further, moving quickly across the street toward the school building. She could feel his eyes on her back, could sense his confusion and frustration at not being able to express his gratitude in some tangible way. But she meant what she said. She did not want or need anything from him. In the teacher's bathroom, she washed the scrape on her elbow under cold water, hissing at the sting. It was deeper than she had thought, still bleeding sluggishly. She pressed paper towels against it until the bleeding stopped, then wrapped it as best she could with more paper towels and medical tape from the ancient first aid kit mounted on the wall. She looked at herself in the mirror above the sink. Her face was pale, making her freckles stand out starkly. Her eyes were wide, still processing what had happened. Her cardigan was torn at the elbow and streaked with dirt from the pavement. She took it off and stuffed it in her bag. She would have to teach in just her blouse for the rest of the day, despite the inadequate heating in the building. The afternoon classes passed in a surreal blur. She taught fractions to her sixth graders, moving through the lesson plan on autopilot while her mind replayed the moment over and over. The sound of the engine, the boy's small body in her arms, the rush of wind as the SUV passed within inches of them, the realization of how close it had been. Her students noticed something was different. "Miss Willer, are you okay?" one of them asked during math. "You seem kind of weird today." "I am fine," she assured them with a smile that felt strained on her face. "Just a little tired. Now, who can tell me how to reduce this fraction to its simplest form?" When the final bell rang, she sat at her desk for a long time, staring at the stack of papers she needed to grade.
Other teachers poked their heads into her classroom to say goodbye, heading home to their families and their lives. She waved absently, not trusting herself to engage in small talk. Finally, as the sun began to set and the building grew quiet around her, she gathered her things and left. The bus ride home took 40 minutes, carrying her through different neighborhoods that marked the economic geography of the city. From the commercial downtown to the comfortable residential areas to the worn-down neighborhood where she lived, each stop a marker of decreasing prosperity. Her apartment was on the third floor of a building that had been constructed in the 1960s and had not been updated much since. The hallway smelled like cooking oil and old carpet and something vaguely chemical that she had never been able to identify. Her door stuck when she tried to open it, swollen from humidity and age. She had to push hard with her shoulder, the way she did every day. Inside, the apartment was small but clean. She had made it a home despite its flaws, despite the peeling linoleum in the kitchen and the water stains on the ceiling and the radiator that clanked all night. Books lined makeshift shelves made from boards and cinder blocks. A single plant sat on the windowsill, a spider plant that was struggling but alive, sending out runners despite the limited light. Photographs were tacked to the walls, mostly of former students, reminding her why she did what she did. She dropped her bag by the door and sank onto her second-hand couch, a lumpy thing she had found at a thrift store 5 years ago. Only then did she allow herself to feel it. The fear. The realization of how close it had been. If she had been 1 second slower, if her legs had not carried her fast enough, if her aim had been off by even a foot, that little boy would be dead. She put her face in her hands and breathed deeply, fighting back tears. Her phone rang, the sound jarring in the quiet apartment. She did not recognize the number, but answered anyway, thinking it might be a parent of one of her students. "Hello? Miss Miller? This is Jonathan Ashford. I hope you do not mind me calling. The nanny got your name from the school directory. I needed to reach you." Sarah sat up straighter, surprised. "Mr. Ashford, is Thomas all right?" "He is fine, still scared, but fine. He has not stopped talking about you. He thinks you are a superhero. He wants to know if you have a cape at home." Despite everything, Sarah smiled. "I am just a teacher. No cape, no superpowers, just someone who happened to be in the right place at the right time." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "I called because I wanted to apologize if I seemed pushy earlier. You clearly did not want attention or thanks. But I need you to understand something. My son is everything to me. His mother, my wife, passed away when he was 3 years old. Cancer. It was fast and brutal, and it destroyed me. It has been just the two of us for 4 years, trying to figure out how to live in a world without her. If I had lost him today..." His voice cracked slightly, the composure slipping. "I cannot imagine a world without him. I cannot imagine having to bury my son the way I buried my wife. And you gave me the gift of not having to find out what that world looks like. Do you understand? You gave me everything." Sarah felt her throat tighten with emotion. "I am glad he is safe, Mr. Ashford. Truly, I am glad you still have your son. Please, call me Jonathan, and please let me do something for you. Anything, name it. There is nothing I need. Everyone needs something." She almost laughed at that, a bitter sound that caught in her throat. The truth was, she needed 100 things, 1,000 things. A new coat because hers had a broken zipper. A reliable car instead of the bus that ate 2 hours of her day. Money to fix the leak in her ceiling that she had been putting off for 6 months. A dentist appointment she had been avoiding because she could not afford the copay. But she could not ask this stranger for those things, no matter what she had done for his son. I appreciate the thought, but I am fine. I hope you and Thomas have a good evening. Spend time with him. That is what matters. She hung up before he could argue further. For a long moment, she sat in the gathering darkness of her apartment, too tired to get up and turn on lights. She felt the weight of the day settle over her like a heavy blanket. Then she stood, turned on the single lamp by the couch, and pulled out the stack of papers she needed to grade. Life went on. Tomorrow, there would be more students to teach, more lives to touch in small ways. That was enough. It had to be enough. But Jonathan Ashford was not a man who gave up easily. He had not built a billion-dollar company by accepting no for an answer. Over the next few days, Sarah began to notice things, small things at first, then increasingly impossible to ignore. A package arrived at the school, delivered by courier during her lunch break. Inside was a cardigan, the exact shade of blue as the one she had ruined, but clearly expensive. The fabric was soft cashmere, the label from a designer she recognized from magazine advertisements. She tried to return it, but there was no return address, just a small card that said, "Thank you." The next day, she came home to find a basket on her doorstep. Not a small basket, but an enormous thing filled with groceries. Fresh vegetables and fruits, premium cuts of meat, artisan bread, imported cheese, coffee that probably cost more per pound than she spent on food in a week, enough to last her 2 weeks easily. Again, no card, but she knew. She called the number he had used. Jonathan answered on the first ring, as if he had been waiting. "Please stop sending me things." "I do not know what you mean," he said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. "Mr. Ashford." "Jonathan. Jonathan." She tried to keep her voice firm. "I cannot accept these gifts. It is not appropriate." "Why not? You saved my son's life. These are small tokens of appreciation." "They are not small to me." She struggled to find the words to make him understand. "You live in a different world than I do. These things might be nothing to you, but to me they feel like charity. I do not want to be your charity case. I do not want to be the poor teacher you rescued after she rescued your son." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. When he spoke again, his voice was softer, more serious. "That is not how I see you at all. I see someone who acted with incredible courage, someone who puts others first without thinking about herself, someone who has dedicated her life to making the world better, one child at a time. I want to honor that. Is that so wrong?" Sarah sat down heavily on her couch, suddenly exhausted. "I appreciate what you are trying to do. I really do. But you do not owe me anything. I did what anyone should do, what I would do again without hesitation. Please just let this go. Can I ask you something? What made you become a teacher?" The question caught her off guard. "What? You clearly did not do it for the money or the prestige. So why? What made you choose this life?" Sarah leaned back and closed her eyes, thinking about how to answer. "I grew up poor, really poor. My father left when I was 6. My mother worked 3 jobs to keep us fed and housed. There were times we lived in our car, times we ate at soup kitchens, times I went to school in clothes that did not fit because we could not afford new ones. I am sorry. Do not be. It taught me what matters, and it showed me the power of teachers. I had this teacher in 5th grade, Mr. Roberts. He saw that I was struggling, that I was hungry and tired and falling behind. He started bringing me breakfast, just quietly, without making a big deal of it. A bagel and cream cheese, an apple, sometimes a homemade muffin his wife had baked. He stayed after school to help me with homework. He told me I was smart,
that I could do anything I wanted if I worked hard enough. He made me believe in myself. And that changed everything. It saved me. Sarah felt tears prickling at her eyes. Without him, I do not know what would have happened to me. But because of him, I graduated high school. I got a scholarship to community college. I became a teacher so I could be for other kids what he was for me. So I could see the ones who were struggling and help them believe in themselves. That is beautiful, Jonathan said quietly. And it makes me understand you better. You are not just saving children from cars. You are saving them from lives of poverty and hopelessness. You are giving them futures. I am trying. It does not always work, but I keep trying. Then let me help you try harder. Let me give you the resources to reach more children, to make a bigger impact. How? I do not know yet, but I will figure it out. Just promise me you will not shut me out completely. Promise me you will let me be part of this in some way. Sarah hesitated, then sighed. I promise I will think about it. But no more gifts to me personally. If you want to help, help the kids. Deal. And Sarah, yes, thank you for everything. After they hung up, Sarah sat in the quiet of her apartment for a long time, thinking about the conversation. She thought about Mr. Roberts and the breakfasts he had brought her so many years ago. She thought about all the students she had taught over the years, the ones who had succeeded and the ones she had lost to poverty and violence and hopelessness. She thought about what she could do with real resources, with someone powerful on her side. Maybe, she thought, maybe this was not about charity. Maybe this was about partnership. Maybe this wealthy man with all his resources and her with all her experience could actually make a difference together. The thought was both exciting and terrifying. 2 weeks passed. Sarah heard nothing more from Jonathan Ashford, and she began to relax, assuming he had finally accepted her wishes. She threw herself back into teaching with renewed energy, organizing a book drive for the school library and staying late 3 nights a week to tutor students who were falling behind. She met with parents, mediated conflicts between students, and advocated fiercely for a girl whose home situation was deteriorating. Then, one Tuesday morning, the principal called her into her office. Sarah went nervously, wondering if she had done something wrong. Had a parent complained? Was there a problem with her teaching? But when she entered the office, the principal, Mrs. Henderson, was smiling broadly, her eyes bright with excitement she was barely containing. Sarah, please sit down. I have some extraordinary news. Sarah sat, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, confused by the principal's demeanor. We have received a donation. Mrs. Henderson's voice was shaking slightly. A very significant donation, the largest in the history of this school, the largest in the history of this district. She slid a letter across the desk. Sarah picked it up with trembling fingers and read. The words blurred at first, then came into sharp, shocking focus. $1 million for school renovations, supplies, technology upgrades, and teacher salaries, earmarked specifically for Riverside Elementary with no strings attached. Sarah's hands began to shake so badly she almost dropped the letter. Who donated this? The principal leaned forward, her expression curious. A man named Jonathan Ashford. He runs some kind of tech company, apparently very successful. He says you know him? He says you inspired this gift? Sarah could not speak. Her throat had closed completely. $1 million. It was more money than she could comprehend, more than seemed real. It would transform the school. New books, new computers, repairs to the building that had been needed for years.
Fair wages for teachers who had been struggling and sacrificing. The principal continued, watching Sarah's face carefully. He also included a personal note for you. She handed over a sealed envelope, cream-colored and heavy, with Sarah's name written in elegant script. Sarah took it with numb fingers. She stood up slowly, her legs unsteady beneath her. "May I be excused?" "Of course. And Sarah," Mrs. Henderson's voice was warm, "thank you. Whatever you did to inspire this generosity, thank you on behalf of every teacher and student in this building." Sarah walked back to her classroom in a daze, barely seeing the hallways or the students who called out greetings to her.
She closed the door to her empty classroom and sat at her desk, staring at the envelope for a full minute before opening it. The note inside was handwritten, the script neat and precise, covering 2 full pages. "Dear Sarah, I hope you can forgive me for going against your wishes in some ways, but after our last conversation, I realized something important. You told me to help the kids. You did not ask for anything for yourself. You never do. That told me everything I needed to know about who you are and what matters to you. So, I am helping the kids. I am donating to your school because I believe in the work you do there, because I believe education is the most important investment we can make in the future. This money will repair buildings and buy supplies and pay teachers what they are worth. But I am also doing something else, and I hope you will not be angry. I have established a scholarship fund in your name. The Sarah Miller Scholarship will provide full funding for 5 students from Riverside Elementary to attend college every year, in perpetuity. The fund is endowed with $5 million, which will generate enough income to support these scholarships forever. The selection criteria are simple. The scholarships will go to students who demonstrate not just academic achievement, but character. Students who show kindness, courage, and dedication to helping others. Students like you were. Students you have inspired. You said everyone needs something. What I need is to know that the world has more people like you in it. People who act without thinking of themselves. People who see a child in danger and run toward the danger instead of away from it. People who choose teaching over more lucrative careers because they believe in something bigger than personal gain. By educating more children, by giving them opportunities they would not otherwise have, you are creating those people. You are changing the world in ways my money never could alone. I am just providing tools. You are doing the real work. Thank you for saving my son. Thank you for showing me what courage looks like. Thank you for reminding me what truly matters. With deepest gratitude and respect, Jonathan. Sarah read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face and falling onto the paper, smudging the ink in places. She put her head down on her desk and cried, not from sadness, but from overwhelming emotion. Gratitude, relief, disbelief, joy. For so long, she had carried everything alone. She had pushed through exhaustion and poverty and doubt because she believed in her students, because she believed education could change lives. But she had done it without support, without recognition, without anyone telling her that her work mattered. And now, someone was not just telling her, someone was showing her in the most powerful way possible. Someone was investing millions of dollars in her vision, in her students, in her belief that every child deserved a chance. When her students arrived for class 20 minutes later, she had composed herself enough to greet them, though her eyes were still red. She told them about the donation, watching their faces light up with excitement and hope. She told them about the changes coming to their school,
about new books and computers and a warm building and teachers who would not have to work second jobs. And she told them about the scholarship fund, about the 5 students every year who would get to go to college fully funded, who would get opportunities that had seemed impossible just yesterday. One student raised her hand. It was Maria, the girl who had asked about algebra weeks ago. "Miss Miller, why did this man give us so much money? He does not even know us." Sarah chose her words carefully, knowing this was an important moment. "Because he believes in you. Because someone showed him that kindness and courage matter more than wealth. Because he wants to make sure you have every chance to succeed, to become the amazing people I know you can be." "But who showed him that?" Sarah smiled, wiping at her eyes. "Someone who loves teaching. Someone who believes every single one of you deserves the very best this world has to offer." The students erupted in cheers, talking over each other in excitement, already dreaming about their futures. Sarah let them celebrate, let them hope, let them believe that maybe their lives could be different than they had thought. She stood at the front of the room, watching them, and felt something fundamental shift inside her. She had spent so long feeling small, feeling powerless against the enormous tide of poverty and struggle. But she was not powerless. She never had been. Every student she taught, every life she touched, that mattered. That changed the world in ways both visible and invisible. That evening, she called Jonathan. He answered immediately, as if he had been waiting. "You did not have to do this."
Her voice was thick with emotion. "I know, but I wanted to. I needed to. The scholarship fund, the donation, it is too much. It is more than I ever imagined. It is not nearly enough. Sarah, do you know what my son said to me last night?" "What?" "He said he wants to be like you when he grows up. Not like me, with all my money and success. Like you. He said you are a hero because you help people, even when it is hard. Even when you do not get anything for it. Even when no one is watching." His voice was thick with emotion. "He is 7 years old, and you taught him something I have been failing to teach him his whole life. You taught him that real strength is not about money or power. It is about character. It is about who you are when no one is looking and nothing is forcing you to be good." Sarah wiped at her eyes. "I do not know what to say. Say you will accept this. Say you will let me be part of the change you are creating. I am not trying to save you or fix your life. I am trying to invest in something that actually matters. And your work, what you do every single day, that matters more than anything I have ever invested in." She took a deep breath, letting herself accept it. "Okay, yes, thank you. Thank you so much. You have no idea what this means. I think I do. I have spent the last 2 weeks talking to people about you. Teachers at your school, former students, your principal. Do you know what they all said?" "What?" "They said you are the best teacher they have ever known. They said you spend your own money on supplies for students. They said you stay late every single day to help kids who are struggling. They said you have changed lives. One of your former students told me you paid for her mother's medicine when they could not afford it. Another said you bought him winter clothes when he was coming to school in a too small jacket. You do not just teach, Sarah. You love. And that love changes everything." Sarah was crying again, unable to stop the tears. "It is what teachers do. It is what we are supposed to do. No, it is what you do." They talked for another hour. He told her more about Thomas, about how the boy had been struggling since his mother's death 4 years ago, how he had been withdrawn and quiet, seeing a therapist twice a week, having nightmares about losing his father too. But after the incident in the street, Something had changed. Thomas was talking more, smiling more, asking questions about the world with genuine curiosity instead of fear. "He wants to meet your students," Jonathan said. "He keeps asking me if he can visit your classroom. He wants to see where you teach, meet the kids you talk about." Sarah smiled through her tears. "He is welcome anytime. I would love to have him visit." She told him about her students, about Maria, who wanted to be a doctor, even though no one in her family had ever gone to college, about James, who wrote poetry in the margins of his homework, beautiful, heartbreaking verses about his neighborhood and his dreams, about little Sophie, who came to school hungry most days, but still smiled and helped other students with their work, about all the brilliant, struggling, amazing children she had the privilege of teaching. When they finally said goodbye, Sarah felt lighter than she had in years. She looked around her small apartment and saw it differently. It was not a symbol of failure or a reminder of what she lacked. It was a choice she had made consciously. She had chosen teaching over a more lucrative career. She had chosen her students over her own comfort. And now, finally, someone was telling her that those choices had value beyond what she could see. The renovation of Riverside Elementary began 6 weeks later. Construction crews arrived to fix the roof that had been leaking for 3 years. They replaced windows that had been drafty and broken. They updated the ancient heating system so classrooms would actually be warm in winter. They painted hallways that had not seen fresh paint in decades. They built a new library with floor-to-ceiling shelves waiting to be filled with books. New textbooks arrived by the boxful, so many that they had to be stored in the gym until teachers could distribute them. Current editions, not the outdated versions they had been using. Math books that reflected modern teaching methods. Science books with accurate information and glossy photographs. History books that included diverse perspectives and recent events. Computers were installed in every classroom, brand new machines with the latest software. The computer lab was completely rebuilt, with 40 stations instead of 12. High-speed internet was installed throughout the building, replacing the spotty connection that had made online research nearly impossible. The teachers received raises, not enormous, but significant enough to ease the constant financial pressure. Sarah's salary increased by 15%, which meant she could finally afford to fix her car instead of relying on the bus. She could buy groceries without calculating every penny. She could go to the dentist without fear of the bill. But more than the physical changes, there was a shift in atmosphere. The school felt different. Students walked taller. Teachers smiled more. There was a sense of possibility that had been missing before, a feeling that maybe they were not forgotten after all, that maybe their education mattered to someone. In the main hallway, near the front entrance where everyone would see it, a plaque was installed, bronze with elegant engraving. It read, "The Sarah Miller Scholarship Fund, established to provide educational opportunities for students who demonstrate courage, kindness, and dedication to learning. May this fund inspire generations to come." Sarah stood in front of that plaque on the day it was unveiled, surrounded by students and teachers and parents and local media who had come to cover the story. She felt both proud and humbled, honored and slightly embarrassed by the attention. The principal gave a speech about transformation and gratitude, about what it meant when someone invested in education, when someone believed in children enough to give them real resources and real opportunities. Local news cameras recorded everything. Reporters asked Sarah questions about the day she saved Thomas, about her teaching philosophy, about what the donation meant for the school. She answered as best she could, trying to deflect attention away from herself and toward the students,
toward what was possible when communities invested in education. But the reporters wanted the human interest story, the poor teacher who became a hero, the billionaire who responded with generosity. It was a narrative people could understand and feel good about. Jonathan and Thomas attended the ceremony. Sarah had not seen them since that day in the park, though they had talked on the phone dozens of times. When Thomas spotted her in the crowd, he broke away from his father and ran to her, throwing his arms around her waist. "Miss Miller, you have a scholarship with your name. That means you are really important." She knelt down to his level, smiling at his enthusiasm. "It means people care about education. It means kids like you will get chances to do amazing things." "Daddy says I can come visit your class. Can I? Can I meet your students?" "Of course."
"I would love that." Jonathan approached, and she stood to shake his hand. But instead of a handshake, he pulled her into a brief hug. "Thank you for doing this, for letting me be part of it." "Thank you," she said quietly. "You have changed everything, not just for me, but for hundreds of students. We changed it together. You showed me what mattered. I just provided resources." They stood together as the ceremony continued, as students performed songs they had prepared, as parents thanked everyone involved, as the principal cut a ribbon and declared the newly renovated school open. Sarah felt tears in her eyes throughout, overwhelmed by the tangible evidence that her work mattered, that her students mattered, that someone powerful had actually listened and acted. After the ceremony, Jonathan pulled her aside. "I want to talk to you about something, an idea I have been developing." "Okay." "This scholarship fund, what we did here at Riverside, it is working. I can see the impact already. Students are more engaged, teachers are more energized, the whole atmosphere has changed. And I keep thinking, why just here? Why just 5 students a year? Why not more schools, more students? What if we could replicate this model across the city, across the state? What if we could create hundreds of Sarah Miller scholarships?" Sarah stared at him. "That would cost, I know what it would cost, and I have it. Money sitting in investments that could be doing so much more good in the world. I want to establish a foundation, a nonprofit, dedicated to supporting education in underserved communities. And I want you to be part of it, not just as an inspiration, but as an active partner. I need your expertise, your experience, your understanding of what teachers and students actually need. I am not a business person. I do not know anything about running a foundation. You know what matters. I can hire people who understand business and nonprofits and tax law. What I cannot hire is someone with your integrity and passion and real-world experience. Will you at least think about it?" Sarah felt dizzy with the magnitude of what he was proposing. "I still want to teach. I cannot give up my classroom. I would never ask you to. We could structure it so you are teaching 3 days a week and working with the foundation 2 days a week. Or whatever balance makes sense. I just need your voice in this."
I need to make sure we are actually helping, not just throwing money at problems. She looked at him carefully, searching his face for any hint of ego or savior complex. But she saw only sincerity and determination. This man genuinely wanted to make a difference, and he was smart enough to know he could not do it alone. "Yes," she said, finally. "Yes, I will do it. But on my terms. We focus on what students actually need, not what looks good in press releases. We listen to teachers, not just administrators. We measure success by changed lives, not just test scores." Jonathan smiled, the first real smile she had seen from him, transforming his severe face into something warmer. Deal. Absolutely deal. Over the next year, the Sarah Miller Foundation took shape. Jonathan assembled a team of experienced nonprofit professionals.
Sarah joined the board of directors, attending meetings, reviewing grant applications, visiting schools that were applying for support. She used her evenings and weekends, sometimes staying up late into the night reviewing proposals and writing recommendations. It was exhausting, adding to her already full schedule. But it was also exhilarating. For the first time, she had real power to affect change beyond her own classroom. She could ensure that dozens of schools received the resources they needed. She could create opportunities for hundreds of students who would otherwise have none. The foundation established Sarah Miller scholarships in 50 schools across 10 states. Each school received funding for renovations, supplies, and teacher salaries. Each school selected 5 students annually to receive full college scholarships based on character and potential, not just grades. Sarah traveled to these schools, meeting with teachers and students, listening to their stories, learning about their challenges. She met teachers who were working 2 jobs to survive, who were buying supplies with their own limited money, who were staying late every day to tutor students despite exhaustion. Teachers like her, teachers who had chosen this life despite its difficulties because they believed in the transformative power of education. She amplified their voices. She wrote articles for education journals. She testified before legislative committees about the need for increased education funding. She appeared on news programs, always deflecting attention from herself and toward the systemic issues that made teaching so difficult. And through it all, she remained Miss Miller, the teacher in room 14 at Riverside Elementary. She arrived early and stayed late. She tutored struggling students and celebrated successes. She mediated conflicts and advocated for families. She loved her students fiercely, individually, completely. Her students knew about her work with the foundation, about the schools she was helping across the country. They were proud of her, proud to be part of something bigger than their own classroom. Some of them started talking about becoming teachers themselves, inspired by her example. Maria, the girl who had questioned the value of algebra, was now in 8th grade and working harder than ever. She had decided she wanted to be a pediatrician, to help sick children in her community. Sarah tutored her in advanced math and science, helping her prepare for high school honors classes, watching her confidence grow with each success. James, the poet, had published his first collection of poems in a small local journal. Sarah had helped him submit his work, had driven him to the reading where he performed for an audience for the first time. She watched him stand on stage, nervous but brave, sharing his words about poverty and hope and dreams deferred. The audience gave him a standing ovation. Sophie, who used to come to school hungry, was thriving now. The school had implemented a breakfast program using some of the foundation money, ensuring no child had to learn on an empty stomach. Sophie was reading above grade level, helping younger students with their homework during lunch, talking about becoming a teacher like Miss Miller when she grew up. 2 years after the incident in the street, Sarah received a letter at school. The envelope was worn, the handwriting slightly shaky. She opened it curiously, pulling out 2 pages of lined notebook paper. "Dear Miss Miller, you do not know me, but my name is Marcus Johnson. I was a student at Riverside Elementary 10 years ago, in your very first year of teaching. I was in your 5th grade class. I wanted to write to tell you that I just graduated from college with a degree in civil engineering. I am the first person in my family to graduate from college. I have a job lined up at a firm in the city, designing bridges and infrastructure. I am going to make a real salary, enough to help my mom retire from her night shift job, enough to give my younger siblings opportunities I did not have. I wanted you to know, because you are the reason I made it. I was failing 5th grade. I had convinced myself I was stupid, that school was not for me, that I was destined for the same struggling life my parents had. But you saw something in me I could not see in myself. You stayed after class with me every single day for months. You helped me with my homework when I could not understand it. You explained things in different ways until something clicked. You told me I was smart. You told me I could succeed at anything if I worked hard enough. You made me believe in myself. I never forgot that. When things got hard in high school, when I wanted to drop out because it was so difficult, I remembered what you taught me. I remembered that someone believed in me. When I was struggling in college, taking classes I did not think I could pass, I heard your voice in my head telling me to break problems down into smaller pieces, to not give up, to keep trying. So thank you. Thank you for seeing potential in a kid everyone else had given up on. Thank you for caring when you did not have to. Thank you for being the best teacher I ever had. Thank you for changing my life. I hope you are still teaching. I hope you are still changing lives the way you changed mine. With eternal gratitude, Marcus Johnson. Sarah read the letter 3 times, then carefully folded it and put it in her desk drawer with dozens of others like it. Letters from former students who had gone on to become nurses, mechanics, artists, social workers, parents. Letters that told her the work mattered, that the choice to teach had been the right one, that the struggles and sacrifices had purpose. These letters sustained her through the difficult days, through the frustrations and setbacks, through the moments when she questioned whether she was making any difference at all. They reminded her that impact was not always immediate or visible. Sometimes you planted seeds that took years to grow. Sometimes you changed lives in ways you would never fully see. That evening, she called Jonathan to tell him about the letter. They spoke regularly now, had become genuine friends bound by shared purpose and mutual respect. He had become more than just a donor to her work.
He was a partner, a collaborator, someone who understood what she was trying to accomplish. "I got a letter today from a former student," she told him, and proceeded to share Marcus's story. Jonathan was quiet for a long moment after she finished. "Do you know what I admire most about you? It is not the courage you showed that day with Thomas, though that was remarkable. It is the courage you show every single day. Walking into that classroom knowing how hard the work is, knowing how little appreciation you typically get, knowing how many students you will lose to poverty and violence and systemic failures, and doing it anyway. That is real heroism. I do not feel like a hero. I just feel like a teacher doing her job. Maybe that is the same thing. Maybe the real heroes are the people who show up every day and do the hard work without recognition or reward, who keep pushing forward even when progress is slow and success is uncertain." Sarah smiled. "Speaking of Thomas, how is he doing?" "He is incredible, thriving in school, making friends, still talks about you constantly. He wants to start volunteering at Riverside, helping younger kids with reading. I think you have created a teacher in the making." "That would make me so happy. The world needs more teachers, especially teachers who understand struggle and choose to help anyway. He learned that from you. We both did." They talked about the foundation, about plans to expand the scholarship program further, about a conference they were organizing for teachers to share best practices and support each other. They talked about systemic changes needed in education funding and policy, about how to advocate more effectively, about the long game of social change. When they said goodbye, Sarah sat in her apartment and looked around. She had moved to a slightly bigger place 6 months ago, one with reliable heat and no leaky ceiling. She could afford it now, thanks to her raise and the modest salary she received from the foundation for her board work. But it was still simple, still modest. That was her choice. She thought about the trajectory of her life, about the choices she had made.
She could have pursued a more lucrative career. She had been smart enough, driven enough.
But she had chosen teaching because it aligned with her values, because it gave her life meaning, because she wanted to be for other children what Mr. Roberts had been for her. And now, through an unexpected series of events, through one split-second decision to run toward danger, she had amplified that impact exponentially. She was not just changing individual lives in her classroom. She was changing systems. She was creating opportunities for thousands of students across multiple states. She was elevating the profession of teaching, showing the world that teachers deserved respect and resources. But the work that mattered most to her, the work that defined her, was still happening in room 14 at Riverside Elementary. Every morning, she walked into that classroom and greeted her students by name. She learned about their lives, their struggles, their dreams. She taught them math and reading and history, but also resilience and self-worth and the power of education to transform lives. She still spent her own money on supplies sometimes, not because she had to anymore, but because she saw a need and could not help responding. She still stayed late to tutor students. She still called parents to check on kids who seemed troubled. She still advocated fiercely for students who needed someone in their corner. Nothing fundamental had changed about who she was or what she valued. The money and the recognition had simply provided tools to do the work more effectively, to reach more students, to create more opportunities. 3 years after the incident, the foundation held its first major fundraising gala. Jonathan had organized it over Sarah's protests. She hated formal events, hated being the center of attention. But he convinced her it was necessary to raise money for expansion, to recruit more donors, to build support for their work. The gala was held at a luxury hotel downtown, in a ballroom that probably cost more to rent for one night than Sarah earned in 6 months. Women wore designer gowns, men wore tuxedos, servers circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Everything was elegant and expensive and completely foreign to Sarah's world. She wore a simple black dress she had found at a consignment shop, feeling out of place among the wealth and glamour.
But Jonathan appeared at her elbow almost immediately, introducing her to donors and philanthropists, telling her story, making sure she was comfortable. Thomas was there too, now 10 years old and confident in a way that reminded her of his father. He stuck close to Sarah throughout the evening, holding her hand, introducing her to people as the woman who saved his life and changed everything. The program included speeches and testimonials. A teacher from one of the scholarship schools spoke about what the funding had meant for her students. A scholarship recipient, now a college sophomore, spoke about opportunities she never thought possible. A principal talked about transformation and hope. Then Jonathan took the stage. He spoke about his son, about the terror of almost losing him, about the teacher who acted without hesitation. He spoke about what he had learned from Sarah, about how real wealth was measured not in dollars, but in lives changed and communities strengthened. And then he said something that took Sarah completely by surprise. "Tonight, I am announcing an additional commitment to the Sarah Miller Foundation. I am pledging $100 million over the next 10 years to expand our scholarship program to 500 schools nationwide. We are going to ensure that teachers have resources, that students have opportunities, that education is valued the way it should be." The room erupted in applause. Sarah felt tears streaming down her face. $100 million, 500 schools, thousands of students who would receive chances they would not otherwise have. It was almost incomprehensible in scale. But Jonathan was not finished. He gestured for Sarah to join him on stage. She walked up slowly, aware of hundreds of eyes on her, feeling exposed and vulnerable.
Jonathan put his hand on her shoulder. None of this happens without Sarah Miller. Not the foundation, not the scholarships, not the change we are creating in communities across this country. She showed me, showed all of us, that true courage is not about dramatic rescues, though she did that too. True courage is showing up every day for work that is undervalued and underpaid because you believe in something bigger than yourself. True courage is seeing a child who needs help and helping them, whether that child is running into traffic or struggling with fractions or going home to a difficult situation. Sarah does that every single day. She has done it for 15 years.
And because of her example, because of her vision, we are going to make sure thousands more teachers can do the same work with the support and resources they deserve. The applause was thunderous. People stood. Sarah wiped at her eyes, overwhelmed. When the applause finally died down, the moderator handed her a microphone. She had not prepared any remarks, had not expected to speak. She looked out at the crowd of wealthy donors and felt a moment of panic. Then she saw her students. Jonathan had arranged for several of them to attend, to see her honored, to understand the impact of education. Maria was there, wearing a dress Sarah suspected Jonathan had paid for. James was there, looking uncomfortable in a suit. Sophie was there with her mother, both of them beaming with pride. Sarah took a deep breath and spoke from her heart. I am not good at speeches. I am better at teaching fractions and helping kids figure out long division. But I want to say something important. When I became a teacher 15 years ago, people told me I was wasting my potential. They said teachers do not make money, do not get respect, do not change anything important. They were wrong. Teachers change everything. Every single day, teachers are saving lives. Not from cars, though sometimes that too. From poverty, from hopelessness, from the belief that where you start in life determines where you finish. We save children by believing in them when no one else does, by staying late to explain a concept one more time, by buying winter coats when kids are cold, by calling home to check on students who seem sad, by showing up every single day and saying, "You matter. Your education matters. Your future matters." What Mr. Ashford and this foundation are doing is important because it recognizes that truth. It says that teachers are not expendable or interchangeable. It says that education is not something to underfund and ignore. It says that every child, regardless of zip code or income level, deserves excellent schools and dedicated teachers and real opportunities. So I want to thank Jonathan for his generosity. But more importantly, I want to thank the teachers. The ones working second jobs to pay rent. The ones buying supplies with their own limited money. The ones staying awake at night worrying about students. The ones who chose this profession despite every practical reason not to. You are heroes. You are changing the world one student at a time.
And I am honored to work alongside you. The applause was deafening. Sarah handed back the microphone and walked off stage, feeling shaky and exhausted. Several teachers from scholarship schools surrounded her, hugging her, thanking her for her words, for seeing them, for elevating their profession. Later, after the formal program ended and people mingled, Sarah found a quiet corner and sat down, suddenly depleted. The emotional intensity of the evening had drained her completely. Thomas found her there. "Are you okay, Miss Miller?" She smiled at him. "I am fine. Just a little overwhelmed. This is all so much." He sat beside her, his small body pressed against hers in a gesture of comfort. "Daddy says you do not like fancy parties." He is right. I prefer classrooms. Me too. I like visiting your classroom. Your students are cool. They are pretty amazing. Daddy says because of you, lots of kids will get to go to college who could not before. Is that true? It is true. Thousands of kids will have chances they would not have had. That is like being a superhero. Sarah laughed softly. Not really. It is just being a teacher who got very lucky to meet your dad. No, Thomas said seriously. You saved me first, before any of this. You could have gotten hurt, but you saved me anyway. That makes you a superhero. Sarah pulled him close, feeling the weight of his trust and affection. Maybe we are all a little bit superhero when we choose to help people. Your dad is a superhero too, using his money to change lives. Your teacher at school is probably a superhero, anyone who makes the world better in some way. Then there are lots of superheroes. I hope so. I hope there are millions of them. Jonathan approached, holding 2 glasses of wine. He handed one to Sarah. You were brilliant up there. People are already pledging additional donations. We might hit 150 million by the end of the night. Sarah shook her head in wonder. I do not even know what to do with numbers that big. You don't have to know. That's my job. Your job is to make sure we spend it wisely, that we actually help instead of just looking like we are helping. They sat together, the 3 of them, watching the elegant party continue around them. Sarah felt profoundly grateful for the unlikely friendship that had formed, for the partnership that had emerged from tragedy averted, for the opportunity to amplify her life's work in ways she never could have imagined. But tomorrow she would go back to her classroom. She would greet her students by name. She would teach fractions and history. She would stay late to tutor someone struggling. She would do the work she had always done, the work that defined her. Because at the end of the day, that was what mattered most. Not the galas or the recognition, or even the millions of dollars in scholarships. What mattered was the individual child in front of you, the specific student who needed help, the moment when understanding dawned in someone's eyes. That was why she had become a teacher. That was why she stayed a teacher despite everything. And that was why she would always be, first and foremost, Miss Miller from room 14 at Riverside Elementary. The years passed. The foundation continued to grow and expand. More schools were added to the scholarship program. More students received opportunities. More teachers received support and resources. The Sarah Miller name became synonymous with educational excellence and opportunity. But Sarah herself changed very little. She still taught full-time. She still lived modestly. She still spent her own money on supplies sometimes. She still showed up early and stayed late. She still loved her students with fierce dedication. She watched Maria graduate high school with honors and head to college on a full scholarship, planning to become the pediatrician she had dreamed of being. She watched James publish his first book of poetry and get accepted to a prestigious MFA program. She watched Sophie become a peer tutor, helping younger students the way Sarah had helped her, already showing signs of becoming an excellent teacher herself. She watched Thomas grow into a thoughtful teenager who volunteered at Riverside Elementary every Saturday, helping students with reading and math, clearly following in Sarah's footsteps, despite his father's wealth and connections. And she watched as the ripples of that one moment in the street continued to spread outward, touching lives in ways both visible and invisible, creating opportunities and changing trajectories, and proving that one person acting with courage could indeed change the world. 10 years after the incident, Sarah stood at the front of her classroom on a Monday morning, greeting her students as they filed in. New students, a new group of young faces looking to her for guidance and inspiration. She was older now, grain at the temples, lines etched around her eyes from years of smiling and worrying and caring. But her passion had not dimmed. Her belief in the transformative power of education remained absolute. Her commitment to her students was as fierce as ever. She looked at these 23 new faces and saw possibility. She saw futures waiting to be shaped. She saw the next Marcus, the next Maria, the next James. She saw children who needed someone to believe in them, to push them, to love them unconditionally. "Good morning," she said, her voice warm and welcoming. "My name is Miss Miller, and I am so glad you are here. This year, we are going to learn amazing things together. We are going to solve problems and discover new ideas and figure out who you want to become. And I am going to be with you every step of the way." A hand went up, a small girl in the front row, her eyes curious and slightly worried. "Yes?" "Miss Miller, is it true you are like famous? My mom said you are on TV sometimes." Sarah smiled. "I am not famous. I am just a teacher who works with a foundation that helps schools. But what is really important is not anything about me. What is important is you, your education, your future. That is what we are going to focus on this year." Another hand, a boy in the back, slouching in his seat. "Are you rich now? My dad said you know a billionaire." "I am not rich. And yes, I know Mr. Ashford, who has been very generous to our school and many others. But none of that matters in this classroom."
What matters here is that you work hard, that you ask questions when you do not understand something, that you support each other, and that you never give up on yourselves. She paused, looking at each student individually, making eye contact, seeing them as unique individuals rather than a group. "I believe in every single one of you. I believe you can do amazing things. I believe your dreams matter and your futures are bright. And this year, I am going to prove that to you, one lesson at a time." The students settled in, some skeptical, some hopeful, some just glad to be welcomed. Sarah began her first lesson, teaching them not just content, but also belief, not just facts, but also possibility. This was her calling. This was her purpose. Not the foundation work, though that was important. Not the recognition or the partnerships or the large-scale impact. But this, the individual child, the specific moment, the personal connection. She had saved Thomas from a speeding car 10 years ago, but she had been saving children long before that moment, and she would continue saving them long after. Saving them from doubt and hopelessness and the belief that they did not matter. That was the real story, not the dramatic rescue or the generous reward or the foundation that changed thousands of lives. The real story was the quiet, daily work of teaching, the unglamorous, exhausting, essential work of believing in children and showing them they were worthy of that belief. And as Sarah Miller began another year of teaching, another cycle of learning and growing and transforming young lives, she knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was supposed to be, doing exactly what she was meant to do, being exactly who she had always been, a teacher.